Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Chamber Executive Summit on Cybersecurity. I'm Ulrike Bahr-Gedalia, the Senior Director of Digital Economy, Technology and Innovation here at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and I do have the great honor and pleasure to host today's summit. So let me start off by sharing with you that we have well over 100 registrants from across the country, across sectors and industries, different sizes of organizations, in addition to an impressive variety of different roles and responsibilities, non-technical or technical. It's just both alike. So I like to think this truly speaks to the importance and relevance of today's event, the theme and the topic. It seems cybersecurity is security for everyone, and a broad audience has that expressed by showing interest in being here with us today. So today's conversations, I give a high-level overview on cybersecurity, will cover quite a range of topics, as they should, including looking at the present state of cybersecurity and threats to Canada from a government and also industry perspective, public-private partnerships and collaboration, as well as discussing how organizations can respond and adapt to new risks and threats amid tightening wallets and increased threat sophistication. A bit of an overview then of the run of the day and agenda. Today's summit will begin with a very special government address and keynote by Chief Caroline Xavier of the Communications Security Establishment, who some of you also known as CSE, followed by a fireside chat with the chief and David Shipley, who is the CEO of Beauceron Security and the Cyber Now Council co-chair. And finally, we will dive into a panel discussion with TELUS, F12, GeoComply, and Cohere, moderated by our other Cyber Now Council co-chair, Jean de Boer of BlackBerry. And together, they will explore what the evolving threat landscape means to businesses and business leaders, among many other topics. So I would now like to pass it over to Atsushi Yamada of ISARA, who is the CEO of ISARA Corporation, to introduce our esteemed keynote guest. So Atsushi, the floor is yours. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Ulrike. Hello, everybody. It may be good morning or good afternoon. My name is Atsushi Yamada. I'm the CEO of ISARA, one of the cybersecurity companies in Canada. And it is my great privilege to introduce you our keynote speaker for this afternoon. However, first, I would like to take a moment to tell you a little bit about myself and the mission ISARA has been on for nearly 8 years. Many of you are already aware of the threat posed to cryptography by quantum computing. All the public key cryptography we rely on today in our communication systems, the internet, our healthcare and financial services ecosystems, and our critical infrastructure will be completely broken in the face of a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. Our mission at ISARA is, and always have been, to secure the world against this threat, to help government and industry clear their path to a quantum-safe future, while respecting the fact that classical risks exist today and that quantum-safe cryptography is only one piece of a larger puzzle. Today's summit is about bridging the gap between government and industry, seeing how we can come together to promote the safety and prosperity of Canadians So I will conclude with this. We always need to consider today's threats, but we must collectively do better to prepare for the threats of tomorrow. While quantum technologies promise many benefits to our world, and while Canada has the talent to be a world leader in this space, the continued safety of Canadians and of our connected economy are paramount. Without government support, we will not only lose our hard-earned advantage, but also leave ourselves vulnerable to tomorrow's threat actors. I look forward to continuing to work with the industry and government to ensure a quantum safe future of us all. With that, I graciously thank you for your time and attention. Now, over the years, ISARA has had the privilege of working closely with the communications security establishment. Their continued support of Canadian businesses and technologies is critical to the development of a quantum safe Canada. And so it is a personal honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Chief Xavier. Chief Xavier has been with the public services for over 30 years, holding key positions with CSE, Industry Canada, Canada Revenue Agency, and the Canada Border Services Agency. From 2017 to 2020, Ms. Xavier was the Assistant Secretary to the Cabinet, Security and Intelligence at the Privy Council Office, and was appointed to the position of Associate Deputy Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada in February 2020. In August 2022, Caroline was appointed to the position of Chief of Communication Security Establishment. We are delighted to have Chief Xavier join us today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yamada. I really appreciate the warm welcome, and hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are across the country. So as mentioned, my name is Carolyn Xavier. I like to also share my pronouns, which are she and her. And as mentioned, I am indeed the Chief of the Communications Security Establishment, and as was mentioned, also known as CSE. So CSE is Canada's Foreign Signals Intelligence Agency, or SIGINT is the other way we like to call it, and the technical authority for cybersecurity and information assurance. So we do our darndest to be able to keep government communications secure, and our best in terms of trying to ensure that what Canada's foreign-based adversaries are up to, and whether or not they're hostile states, groups, or individuals. CSC does include the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, which was set up about 5 years ago to boost up the cybersecurity of Canada's critical infrastructure together with partners, industry, and academia. You may have also heard the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity referred as CCCS or Cyber Center for short. I would also like to say that as an agency, we are the code breakers, the code makers, and friends, and we want to be friends with you in order to help you step up your cybersecurity and resilience and defense. So before I get into the actual talk of today, I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that CSC and the Cyber Center are located in Ottawa on the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I acknowledge the historical oppression of Indigenous peoples across Canada, as well as the resilience of the communities who are working to assert their rights and revive their traditions, languages, and spiritual practices. So with that, we're here to talk about cybersecurity. Those two words cover a multitude of sins. And today I'm just going to focus on primarily the area of cybercrime. As business leaders, you are no doubt aware that cybercrime poses a threat to your organizations. Perhaps you've already fallen victim to ransomware attacks or had valuable data leaked online. TELUS tells us that a Canadian ransomware study that TELUS did in 2022 suggests that 2/3, if I were to ask you to put your hands up, of people on this call would go up. As well, if anybody had been attempted a ransomware, it would be 4 out of 5 of you would put your hands up. The same study calculates the average ransomware payout as $140,000. Other industry reports estimate that sometimes is double that. It's hard to get accurate numbers because most incidents, unfortunately, go unreported. But I think it's safe to say that cyber criminals are making out like bandits, and it's costing our economy in a big way. It's costing you in a big way. Just over a month ago, the Cyber Center published a cyber threat assessment focusing exclusively on cybercrime. We did this jointly with the RCMP, which is the organization part of the National Cybercrime Coordination Center, or NC3. You can find that report on You can find that report on Cyber Center's website, which is cyber.gc.ca. And you'll hear me repeat this one a few times throughout my remarks this morning. It's fairly quick read, but if you don't have the time, I'll just give you the bottom line. Cybercrime is everywhere. It affects every sector of the economy and every size of an organization, even individual. Nobody is immune. Cybercrime poses a threat to our economy and our national security, and it's evolving all the time. Think about all the texts you may receive on your cell phones that tell you to go see what's going on your CIBC or RBC account. And now they're as sophisticated to even putting the first 4 or 5 digits of what is a common card number. And that's what I'm saying. They're getting more and more sophisticated, and it's looking more and more real. And there's a lot more details in the report. Now, when I say cybercrime, you're probably thinking of ransomware, which is correct, where you get a message out of the blue saying, we've locked your systems, and if you want us to restore them, pay us hundreds of thousands of dollars in cryptocurrency. That's the basic version. But then there's double extortion. Well, they've stolen some of your sensitive data, maybe your customers' credit card data or your employees' SIN numbers, and then they're going to leak them online if you don't pay. Ransomware is the best known form of cybercrime, and it is certainly the most disruptive because it can bring an organization's operations to a halt. That's exactly what happened to Colonial Pipeline in 2021, leading to a fuel shortage for millions of people across the US. It's also, however, what happened to Newfoundland's healthcare system here in Canada. Thousands of medical procedures had to be canceled, and the privacy of 1 in 10 Newfoundlanders were breached. More common than ransomware, however, and often more financially costly, is the business email compromise. This is where cyber criminals gain access to a legitimate email account, perhaps because someone's reused the same password that's been stolen somewhere elsewhere, and the threat actor then uses that account to send fraudulent emails, maybe invoices, tricking people into wiring them money when they think they're just paying the bills. Does that sound familiar again, like the text I was talking about not too long ago? Just imagine the damage that can occur when someone can successfully pass themselves off as you, or your billing department, or your customer help desk. That business email compromise is a real threat. If it's not bleak enough, now give the cyber criminals access to artificial intelligence. They can create emails that sound something like what you would write, even deepfakes that could sound like your voice, and generative AI can even write malware code. I'm sorry to be such the bearer of bad news, but the reality is this is where we're at. You really can't take anything at face value, so I really encourage you sometimes to be skeptical. Your staff need to know that if someone emails them asking for something that feels out of character, even if the email address is correct, they should pick up the phone. Trust but verify. Before you wire that payment or disclose that sensitive information, make sure that the person on the other end of that email truly is who it's supposed to be. And if you should be worried as well, because of the fact that sometimes encrypted data has been stolen, and you might think no big deal. But as Mr. Yamada has shared with you, this is quite a concern. So harvest now, decrypt later is one of these threats we're also concerned. And so that quantum computing evolution element is something to be worried about. And this is where Mr. Yamada could come in handy. In all that we do, though, I do have some good news for you. On the same website, you'll find some of those scary and depressing threat assessments. We also have some gold standard cybersecurity advice on cyber.gc.ca. When I say gold standard, that doesn't mean it'll cost you a fortune, but it's really rich in information. It means that basics really do make a difference. If everyone in your organization knows how to spot a phishing email, you're already one step ahead of the cyber criminals. Because unfortunately, sometimes humans are the weakest link. That's one of the most popular resources of all time, the 7 red flags of phishing. It's part of our CSC's Get Cyber Safe campaign, which has simple, easy to follow advice for individuals and small businesses. You do not have to be an IT geek to be able to understand it or follow it, but even there is information for those IT geeks out there who want to know. Get Cyber Safe, has its own website, but you can also find it again on cyber.gc.ca. And you can look under individuals to find more information. But there is also a separate tab for small and medium businesses, large organizations, infrastructure, government institutions, academia. So whoever you are, we try to keep it covered. And by the way, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So I don't know, perhaps the Canadian Chamber of Commerce knew that, which is why they had me speak today as your keynote. Well done. The theme this year is Step Up Your Cyber Fitness. And cyber fitness is about ability to identify, react, and respond to online threats by taking small and easy steps. We focus on educating Canadians about cybersecurity best practices and building on cyber resilience. I encourage you, your colleagues, your family, and your friends to just check out all the free Cyber Month resources that you can find on Get Cyber Safe or getcybersafe.gc.ca. Our advice incorporates insights from cyber centers working defending government networks, as well as CSC Signals Intelligence Mandate. That is very much our secret sauce. We are watching those foreign-based cyber criminals. We are learning their tricks, and we're using that information to inform our advice and guidance. The Cyber Center has had some recent successes in detecting early signs of ransomware attacks before the malware is deployed on their networks. Since May of 2023 to August of this year alone, we've pre-notified over 400 would-be ransomware victims before the cyber criminals had a chance to do any damage. I've seen the list of these organizations we've tipped off, and I can tell you it's the who's who. So it comes in every size, every sector, and it's just a reminder that no one is immune. If your organization is part of Canada's critical infrastructure and you're not already working with us, please do call us. The numbers is again on the website, cyber.gc.ca. The Cyber Center can help you assess and harden your cyber defenses. They can loop you into the threat intelligence feed and help you in the event of a cyber incident. Sometimes even before you're having one. Remember that pre-notification I was talking about? So please do subscribe. I highly recommend it. But I recognize this cannot be just a one-way street. The Cyber Center has some amazing collaborations going on with industry and academic partners. And one was mentioned by Mr. Yamada. For example, we're working with some of the banks and telcos as well to detect phishing scams and cutting them off at the source. Since we started those collaborations 2 years ago, we've instructed trusted partners to remove more than 600,000 malicious web domains from the internet. Those takedowns have neutralized email domains used for phishing scams and fake websites spoofing legitimate organizations, maybe perhaps even your organization. And as we host events such as Geek Week, which is an unclassified event, or classified event such as Big Digs, that's another opportunity that we bring diverse groups together private, government, academia to solve really complex cybersecurity problems and really trying to find practical solutions. Have you participated in any of these? Perhaps there's an opportunity for you in the future. I often also get asked why we're not doing more to help small and medium-sized enterprises. The short answer is it's not directly in our mandate, nor do we have the resources to provide hands-on cybersecurity help to every organization in the country. I so wish we did. But small businesses play a really large role in Canada's economy and in our communities. And as a former entrepreneur myself, I know that from personal experience. But the demand is literally bottomless, and our resources, unfortunately, are not. So we have to focus our resources on Canada's critical infrastructure, because we know that every municipality, emergency services, schools, universities, hospital, healthcare providers, transportation providers, water utility, government departments, Crown Corporation, banks, telecos, the energy sector, every province and every territory, to name a few, are critical infrastructure areas that we're concerned about. We know that cyber criminals like to go after critical infrastructure, and why not? Because they know that these are exactly that, critical. Organizations that can't afford service downtime are more likely to pay up because they feel they have no choice. But cyber criminals do not limit themselves only to large organizations. Those big targets, while lucrative, take more time and effort. They also attract more unwelcome attention. If the cyber criminals can make a quick buck by preying on a large number of small businesses, they will. And if they can fly under the radar of law enforcement, all the better for them. We predict that over in the next 2 years, cyber criminals will evolve with their tactics and target more small and medium-sized organizations. So heads up. That's why Cyber Center has created advice and guidance products tailored specifically to that sector. And so at the risk of sounding a little bit like a broken record, you will find those links on cyber.gc.ca. Click on the tab that says small and medium businesses. That's also why it's so important to report cyber incidents to law enforcement, and in particular to the Cyber Center. As the RCMP colleague Chris Lynham said recently from the NC3, one report from a small town in Canada could be the missing piece to an international puzzle. So please do not underestimate what reporting can do. And this is why cybersecurity and cyber resilience and cyber defense is such a team sport. We all have a position to play in the game. One last point I'd like to make before I wrap things up. There is a part of our mandate we talk a little less about because it's a little bit more classified. But under the CSE Act, since 2019, CSC has been authorized to conduct what we call foreign cyber operations. And we have both active cyber operations as well as defensive cyber operations. Active cyber operations, in plain language, just means we have the opportunity to take action in cyberspace against foreign-based threats. The active part of active cyber operations means we don't wait for the cybercrime group to go after a Canadian target before we respond. We take the fight to them. This is where I really wish I could tell you a few more juicy details. Unfortunately, I want to keep my job, and because we value integrity and lawfulness, this is where I will end on that subject. However, I can tell you that CSE has conducted dozens of successful active cyber operations over the last couple of years to disrupt activities of cyber criminals. We have reduced their ability to deploy ransomware against Canadian targets. We have made it harder for them to buy and sell their goods and services, including the personal and proprietary information of Canadians. We have disrupted cyber criminals. We have made their activities more difficult, less profitable, and in doing so, hopefully, we've deterred future attempts against Canadian targets. This is a long-term campaign. This is not over yet. And in coordination with our international partners, is one of our top strategic priorities. I hope that that's some good news for you on this end. And if you want more good news, I'd really encourage you to have a look, if you haven't already, our recent annual report, because there's a few other good nuggets of good news in there. So to sum up, cybercrime is everywhere. It affects everyone, and it's going to get worse, unfortunately. And so take stock of your cyber defenses, how resilient you are from a cyber perspective, because if cyber criminals haven't already come to your organization, it's just a matter of time. Use our resources to guide you. Where you can find them again, you should know now, cyber.gc.ca. And if you're a critical infrastructure and you're not already in touch with the Cyber Center, please call us. We have some real neat tools that we'd love to share with you. And when we call you, we really ask that you please pick up, because we really are here to help. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Well, thank you, Chief Xavier, for, well, I must say, your passion, your commitment, the insights. I took a lot of notes, and indeed, yeah, Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we are aware, but thanks for the reminder, so everyone is aware and gets reminded of it. And I like, just in a quick summary, code breakers, code makers, friends, partners, collaboration. It's a team effort. It's a team sport. And with that note, let me introduce someone else to our team here on the screen, which is David Shipley, the CEO of Beauceron Security, who will be moderating the fireside chat with you, Chief Xavier, and dive deeper into these topics of cybercrime, ransomware we heard about. And I really like and appreciate that you mentioned that compromised business email, because it really can impact and affect everyone. I often say the minute we put the fingers onto the keyboard, that's where actually the trouble can start. Well, David, without further ado, I give you and the chief the floor, and thank you very much again.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ulrike. Thank you, Chief Xavier, for your very passionate comments. I took a lot of notes. As a former journalist, I loved some of the comments that you made with some specificity. I think you preempted one of my questions, but I'll try and add a little bit to it, but that's okay. I wanted to start off with, we hear a lot in Canada in particular about the Five Eyes and the intelligence relationship we have with these allies. And in a similar vein, what, if any, I'm assuming there are benefits to Canada on the cybersecurity from this relationship with the US, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And I'm thinking as well, in particular, of the United States, because they're such a powerhouse in that partnership and because they are so intertwined with us physically, economically, digitally. Wonder if I can get some of your thoughts on that.
So thanks very much for the question, David. And, to answer it shortly, the answer is yes. There are huge benefits to have the Five Eyes Alliance. I have to say, from a cybersecurity perspective, although, we've been an organization that's been in existence for 77 years, we have had this alliance for, historical number of years. And so really proud of the partnership that we have with our Five Eyes. But in the cybersecurity space, I'd say this is a newer element of the relationship in the Five Eyes space, because, although we've been doing cybersecurity for many years, it's only in the more recent past, because of the creation of the Cyber Center, that we're really bringing cybersecurity to the forefront of our alliance. You're absolutely right. Because of the work we do and because of who we are as Canada and the border that we share with the American colleagues, critical infrastructure in particular has no boundaries when it comes to cybersecurity. We know that there are companies that work on both sides of the border, headquartered in the US or vice versa, and yet there are linkages that are made between both organizations. We see this in particular, like in the oil and gas sector, in the energy sector, for example. And so because of that, we really work hard with CISA, which is our American equivalent of the Cyber Center, but also with our SIGINT partners at the National Security Agency, just because ultimately what we work on from a cybersecurity perspective is recognizing that cybersecurity defense can be informed by signals intelligence. And not only that, that our SIGINT colleagues learn a lot from the cybersecurity defense and threats that come our way. And so that's I find, as I said in my remarks, the secret sauce element of really recognizing that the ability to have both of these entities under one organization and under one agency is really helpful for us to ensure that there's that ongoing collaboration and awareness. But it is also something we see throughout the alliance, that one informs the other, that one works collaboratively with the other. And we have a lot of great partnerships, as I said, in particular with our American colleagues, because of the recognition of the shared border and the way in which companies work across the border. And so when I talked about that pre-notification element earlier in my remarks, a big part of what we do is with CISA in particular, where we work with them and identify where there could be possible threats that are coming to an organization, and we inform both American as well as Canadian firms as quickly as we can if we have this pre-notification element that comes to our attention. And so when I mentioned the statistics that I did in my remarks, it's very much both American and Canadian firms that make up that statistic. And so we do a lot, including the fact that we also multi-badge a lot of our advice. So often you'll see that when CISA has a piece of advice, you'll see the CSC watermark on there as well, or vice versa. So we really try to not reinvent if we can, because ultimately we are all after, the same bad guys. And I'd say the only other point that's worth making in terms of why the alliance matters is because we learn so much from each other, not only in the cybersecurity space, but I'd say in the broader part of our mandate. And because we're all in this together, we all try to work together and try to inform each other. And it also goes beyond the Five Eyes. We have great relationships with other like-minded countries, especially in the cybersecurity space. That's extremely helpful to our mandate and helping us do our best to protect Canadians and Canadian national interests.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate particularly the context you shared about how that partnership with the United States is benefiting Canadian and American firms, and that's a win for everybody. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into active cyber operations. And for those not familiar, this is an area, at least my personal opinion, that is the sole jurisdiction of government and of the CSE duly authorized by legislation. Having private sector firms attempt to quote unquote hack back or take the law into their hands is a disaster for everybody. So I'm really, really encouraged that A, this is part of CSE's mandate, B, to hear that it's been used dozens of times, if I heard correctly. And I wanted to just draw a little bit, is it being used more often? Are we seeing, that did it taper off after a flurry of activity? Is it ramping up? Is there any more you can say about how often we're using that capability, if only to give us who are so often on the receiving end of bad activities a little bit of, competitive hope that we're maybe getting a few punches back in on our own?
Yeah, so I love your question, and it's such a hard one to answer while I have to stay in the unclassified manner, but I'll do my best. So first of all, just to say that it is very much a tool that's part of the toolkit for the government of Canada. It's one that can be used from the foreign policy perspective, from the public safety perspective, from the national security perspective, and even the cyber warfare perspective. So it is a tool that can be used for the government of Canada in whichever way it sees fit. But as you said, the most important part you made of your remarks, for me anyway, is the fact that we are authorized and capable of doing that because of our act and because of the review bodies we have that review our work in this space, and because we really work hard at adhering to cyber norms and standards as well. So, we respect the rule of law and try to ensure that when we're doing this work, we're staying within these lines. And so just really important for that to be up front, because we're not trying to be rogue in the use of these authorities. And so since 2019, I would say that we've been ramping up in their use, and primarily just because, the law is 2019, it's still fairly young, right? And so from that perspective, we are ramping up in terms of recruitment. We're ramping up in terms of getting more and more familiar how these, and I'd say government is ramping up in its familiarity as well. And so I do expect that more and more it will be something that will be a tool that government can use. Of course, you may never know when that will happen, but I can assure you it is one that is turned to when and appropriate. But, again, there are multiple tools in the toolkit of cyber defense and cybersecurity, including even our collection of signals intelligence, for example, as part of that defense. But we really do recognize that this tool is a good way of being able to anticipate something that could be detrimental to Canada and its allies, and really be able to do something in a proactive way as much as possible, as I described in my remarks. It's just another way to do it that, no one might not know who you are, who's doing it, right? So that's about probably as far as I can go. But I do, the one other thing I would share though, just to be able to give you a little bit of a scoop, I guess I'll use the term. We have in the more recent time use our defense cyber operation. We've had these authorities since 2019, the same time we got their active one, but it's only within the last 6 months or so that we've used the defense ones for the first time. But I'd say that we've used them more than once since then. And so the good news about that is that, again, we're continuing to find the right opportunities to be able to flex our muscles and, to your point, punch back where it's appropriate.
No, thank you so much. And again, appreciate that as basically, you know, on the defensive side, the NHL team that can only put its goalie out. It's nice to know you're out there playing forward and offense for us when and where appropriate. I want to take a slightly different tack, and obviously the UK National Cybersecurity Centre and the National Crime Agency, sort of the Canadian equivalents of some of the work that we've done, they published an interesting, unclassified, updated public white paper that details and talks about the sophistication of the modern cybercrime industry. And there are some interesting insights in the report. And one point they make is that it's important that we not play whack-a-mole with ransomware actors and is focusing on specific strains of the malware, et cetera, but on actual further disruption of the ecosystem as high up in the chain as we can. Given that many of these higher elements operate in countries who, let's be charitable and say, at a minimum, condone this criminal activity, or even in some cases encourage or sanction it, is there a limit to active cyber? Are we hitting a wall? Are there more work to be done on the disrupting these gangs and ruining the trust? Do you think that there's plenty more for you and the team to do? Again, duly authorized, under regulation, to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, again, when we're doing cyber defense, again, it's a team sport, right? I mean, we have a role we can play from the CSC and the Cyber Center perspective, but then there are things like sanctions that global affairs can do, right? Our foreign policy side. So there are different, as I said, we're one aspect of the toolkit of what Canada may choose to do, including tools like PNGing individuals, right? So we're one aspect of the toolkit that government could choose to use in trying to punch back, if you want to address issues of concern, especially things that are impacting NATO allies or G7 allies or the Five Eyes, for example. So those things are left really to government decisions, but we make sure that the opportunities are known, what we think we could possibly do in the space, especially because we're part of these conversations. We work hand in glove with our foreign policy partners in particular, especially when it's something that could potentially be harming Canadian national interest. And so with that, we work hard to ensure that they know what the options could be that we put in the window. That doesn't mean that the options are always used, but we know that they exist. And my job as chief of the organization, making sure that that's well known. And our job as well is to ensure to really continue to learn, as I said earlier, from the signals intelligence perspective, from the partners that we work with, both the Five Eyes and beyond, what the landscape looks like. Because the ecosystem is quite complex, and part of our job is really trying to keep ourselves as informed as possible. And I can tell from your question, you've obviously spent some time with our National Cyber Threat Assessment, so thank you for that. And that's what we try to do. We really keep an eye on what's going on, building on all that we're learning from the attacks that we're preventing from a government of Canada in particular, and then trying to ensure that people are as informed as we are where we can, and then building on that to be able to build the right tools to help us to do the defense of Canada. And I do feel quite proud as chief of CSC of some of the things that we have in our toolkit, both in the active and defense cyber operations space that we've talked about, but even beyond that, when I think of all the things we do for being able to protect over 6 billion malicious attacks on government systems on a daily basis. And that's because of some of the work we put in place working with our Shared Services Canada colleagues. So there's always more to do. And this is again where the partnership with the RCMP and the public safety colleagues, our colleagues at CSIS are so critical. And that's why I say it's a team sport for us to really continue to build the resilience of our systems, and something we take really seriously along with our international colleagues.
And just a quick clarification, just to make sure I understood the acronym PNG, persona non grata, like a diplomatic sort of time to pack your bags and leave Canada kind of.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad I was able to figure that one out.
Sorry, I'm using acronyms. I should know better.
No, it's helpful, at least for me. I just wanted to make sure I knew what it
But
was.
David, one other thing, if I could just add, that really helps us though in the learning is the reporting. And so I just wanted to put another plug there. I know I did in my remarks, but really encourage people to report in incidences that they may have. And I know that we're not always the first place they think of coming to, and I get it. But at the very least, trust us that we can potentially help you.
Awesome. And I want to change gears a little bit to talk about a problem that's common in the private sector and want to get some insight from your perspective, leading an agency on the bleeding edge, literally, of cybersecurity, and it's around talent. And there continues to be a lot of talk about the cyber talent shortage in the public and private sectors. And this comes as work also is very important about including the diversity of the cyber workforce, because we get more perspectives, ideas, more talent. How is CSE tackling these challenges? Are you experiencing these challenges? And do you have any success stories or lessons that the private sector could learn from?
So you're absolutely right. Listen, the cyber skills is a global shortage. I know that when I talk to colleagues all around the world, we're all in the same boat. So it's not just Canada. And you know, for me, what I've got going for me at the very least is the mission. Like you mentioned earlier, the fact that I can do active and cyber defense, active and defensive cyber operations because of the authorities I have. It's not something that should be done in the private sector. So at least I've got that element that I can try to use as an attraction of serving Canadians and really wanting to defend Canada from a patriotic sense. And so that is part of what is our I'd say our secret element, or what we try to really promote when we're competing with others. Because, you know, in my case, I may not be able to compete financially with some of the private sector companies, especially those that are on this call. But at the very least, what I aim to do is ensure that I'm at least paying better than what the central government organizations offer. But as well, try to promote an environment that's healthy, that is innovative, that provides collaboration with private sectors, with academia, with international partners. So I really work hard on ensuring that the environment is as welcoming and inclusive as possible. That is a big part of what I do. Having been at immigration as an associate deputy there, I can tell you that, you know, immigration is a source of skills. And because I tend to look for people that are Canadian citizens, that may be a limiting factor for me. But for many of you, you might be able to do a lot more of hiring permanent residents. And we've got a lot of very talented, skilled permanent residents out there, for example. The other thing that we work hard at doing is getting to the resources as early as possible. High schools are not off limits, for example. So we run all kinds of events such as Hacker Gals and Black Boys Code, and really going early into schools to be able to really encourage STEM for women in particular, because sometimes there's a shortage in that domain, to be able to be interested to work in that domain in general, let alone within CSE. Of course, my ultimate hope is that many of them, the top talent, will come my way. But ultimately, what I feel is that as I'm developing top talent, and sometimes they go into the private sector, I feel that I'm also adding to the resilience of Canada, right? And so if you're hiring and private sectors are also hiring some of those skills, then collectively, we're only doing our best to continue to improve what's going on from a cybersecurity perspective. I don't know that I have the magic bullet at this point, other than saying that I do know that, you know, this continues to be an area that we're talking a lot about as a government of Canada, and very much a dialogue, especially with our colleagues at Immigration Canada. And so with that, more options I hope will come. But I think that, you know, we all have to continue to, you know, keep the lanes open as much as possible so we can bring the right talent in.
Chief, thank you so much for that perspective. And I particularly love the call to action to get into the high schools. So my company, just to toss the gauntlet out, we just sponsored 3 local high school Cyber Titan teams. And I love the examples you gave of different groups to sponsor and do that and go look for the talent. Don't wait for them to come to you. I also want to say thank you to CSE. I've had the privilege of working with veterans who have gone through CSE, who've now started phenomenal businesses, like those who may not be aware, but Field Effect is a great Ottawa-based example of a CSE veteran-founded company. You see CSE vets showing up in our telecoms and other places. So I think it is a mutually beneficial relationship to have a really strong CSE that's creating opportunities for entrepreneurship and innovation post-career, and envious that you get to offer the active cyber of things, and grateful for all the work. Thank you for answering my questions today. And I believe we're headed to a break, and good luck in all your work, and know that at least this defender, this goalie is rooting for you guys to go score some more shots on the bad guys and keep the game moving forward.
Thank you so much, David.
Sorry, got too excited to thank everybody as well. Well, thank you, Chief Xavier, and also David. I mean, for, again, the passion, the commitment, the thought-provoking conversations, and a very open dialogue. I mean, we all, I think, I love the team sport reference and repetition. It really needs to be amplified because we're all accountable and responsible in our own way. And so there's a lot to think about, and may I say a lot to digest, which might be a nice segue to our health break, which we will now embrace for about 15 minutes. We should be back hopefully by 2 o'clock to listen to our panel conversation and dive a little deeper into all the topics we discussed and more. So thank you one more time so much, and also on behalf of the Canadian Chamber and all the businesses that we do represent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.